Welcome to another episode of the Move, Talk, Thrive podcast. Today, Emily and I are talking all about decisions, how we make them, how we can improve making them, and get a little bit more comfortable with the decisions that we make. Let's set ourselves up for success in all the decisions we have to make as parents, as leaders, as practitioners. Let's set you up for making some really strong, confident decisions.
We are child development obsessed, business besties, and mums, and we're here to spill all our secrets.
We have a combined 30 years experience working with children, and each episode we will bring you up-to-date research and evidence-based strategies to set your children up to thrive.
I'm Lizzie Dawson, Australian exercise physiologist.
I'm Emily Mackey, Australian speech pathologist,
and this is the Move, Talk, Thrive podcast.
I feel like I have a little bit of decision fatigue this year.
That's a real thing.
It's such a thing. It's something that I talk to Pete about because I'm kind of like, no, I'm not making the decision. Like I make too many decisions and it's like killing me. I'm exhausted.
Yeah, I feel like that has happened to me as well. And uh, I I feel like even if you're really strong at making decisions, which I think you're really strong at, like really good at making decisions, you're only a human, right? And you've got a certain capacity. And even if you're really good at making decisions, or like we'll unpack what that even means, or, if you're quick at making decisions or whatever that looks like, it's still like a mental process and it's still a mental load. So if you're having to do it all of the time, then say in business or in your work life, and then if you come to your personal life, that's where you can feel the fatigue. Is that what's happening, right, with Pete?
Oh, yeah. I just feel like there's so many decisions, like so many decisions.
Well,
And
there
then,
is.
yeah,
There is.
yeah, from financial to parenting to house to, and because I feel like I am at capacity, I'm beyond capacity, it's now about delegating and outsourcing, which is then like a decision in itself, but then it's like the whole process. And then people ask you questions on it.
Mm.
I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I explain this? Like, I just feel like it's a lot. But it's interesting that you say that I'm good at decisions because I feel like I I think I am, but I can take a while to get there. I feel like I need space to make decisions. I kind of need to uh, go through whatever it is that we're making a decision on, and then I need space because quite often, if I don't get involved in the decision, just say it's in business, and I don't get involved in it, or I don't fully understand what's going on, and I kind of step away from it. And then we go through a process, and I will be like, oh, we shouldn't have done this. Like, we should have done something else. So I feel like I really need space to think about what is going on, like logically, or whatever that decision is. So then I can kind of piece together how it's going to look and what decision we should make, which is hard when you're at capacity.
Oh, and everything is hard when you're at capacity. So Lizzie's saying she's at capacity because she's got her Kids Heart Pilates clinic. You've got your Northside Allied Health clinic. You've got a few other business adventures that you've been doing. You're writing curriculums. You've dealt with a cyclone. Have I missed anything? You've got your two kids. You've got your family.
Home. There's something else in there.
You've had a lot of major changes and major. I would say like you're running a lot of big projects or big things, and you're in startup mode.
Yeah.
So when that's what she's saying, when there's lots of different decisions, and so we can sort of just even break that apart. And it's like decisions with a capital D, decisions with a lowercase d. So I feel like when you're talking, you're saying you're fatigued from the decisions with a capital D, like really big decisions that you're having to
Yes.
make.
Massive decisions.
But then that
Yeah.
fatigues you for the decisions with the lowercase d, which would be like, what am I going to have for dinner? What are we eating today?
Oh, yeah. That's not even like, I'm not deciding. I've fully handed over lunch and dinner to Pete.
Yeah.
Like I get home
Definitely
and I sit
that.
on the couch and he does the dinner because I can't do it.
Yeah.
But then if
Shout out
we're
to
going
Pete.
out for dinner and he's like, I'll be like, where do you want to go? And he's like, I don't know, where do you want to go? And I'm like, no, 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 I'm not making this decision. Lucky Peter.
He's a good house husband. We have similar conversations as well, but more, I feel like, I mean, this is probably a part of the decision making process as well. Like, say, if we're talking about where do we want to go for dinner, Mackie does not care about food. Like, he's just like, I'll eat anything. It doesn't bother
Yeah.
me. And so, in some regards, when you're making decisions, I guess it's how much you care about the decision that you're
Yeah.
making as to what energy and effort you'll put into it. And that can
Yeah,
apply for a
I think
big or a
that's
little
so
one.
interesting because I think that I try to delegate decision. I am at capacity, as we've referenced a few times, but I still care about what decisions being made. And I would say this is why, well, Pete is also at capacity with his work, like he's nuts as well. But I would say his main resistance to make a decision is because he's like, well, whatever I choose is going to be wrong. So it's probably easier for everyone if I just make the decisions because I actually care. I'm like, no, I don't want to go there. He's like, okay, well, why don't you just decide?
The joys of marriage and relationship, right? I'm sure everyone can understand. I'm sure everyone can relate. But Mackie's the same. He's like, I know that whatever I choose, you're not going to be happy with, so you may as well just choose. This is with dinner. You may as well just decide. But I
Oh
guess it's how
dear.
much you care, right? And if
Yeah.
you're a foodie, obviously in this instance, if you're a foodie or if you're not. But when I think the first thing is looking at, are you a good decision maker? Like that's the question, right?
Mm.
And so I think that's a pretty sobering question to ask because
Mm.
we like to be good at things. And often when we actually are presented with a situation, how does that situation affect us? Are we able to, you know, have a framework or, are we able to weigh up things logically, objectively, use our intuition, and then we walk through? Or do we just sit on things and procrastinate and put things off, which would be the opposite, I guess, of not making a
Mm.
decision, would be procrastination. So it can be
Mm.
sobering if you think, oh, hand up, I actually procrastinate. Because then you're going, oh, okay, am I not making decisions when I should be? And even that is a decision in itself, right? Like everything is a decision, our thought processes. But there's so much to making decisions. And like we've already said, you can be making really big decisions if you own a business that's like decisions about people's livelihoods, like if you've got employees, or decisions about
Mm.
locations of where your clinic and all your clients are going to be, really big decisions about new products, new launches, where you go, where you put your time. They're big decisions. You could also be then making little decisions every day, which might be, what time slot is this client going to go into? When am I taking my lunch? What am I having for lunch? Where are we going to sit for our meeting? Those are all little decisions. But at the end of the day, we're all making decisions, right?
Absolutely. And I'm just kind of thinking while you're talking, and I feel like I will prepare a lot of those decisions. It's like those big businessmen in the States. Who's the Facebook guy again? Zuckerberg? Like,
Mark.
yeah, doesn't he wear the same? Yeah, I think it's Mark, isn't it? Doesn't he wear the same outfit every day? Like those big, those big billionaire people, like they
He
wear the
does.
same outfit every day because they don't want to have decisions. So I was doing this reflection piece last week on this quarter because I was so, like I've been fairly overwhelmed. I have struggled a little bit this quarter just with the load. There's been a lot. And I kind of was left feeling like I hadn't done much. I was just like, oh my God, I am just dropping the ball everywhere. I did this big reflection piece and I was like, oh my God, I have done so much. This is ridiculous. No wonder I am burnt out. It is only March. I only kind of started in mid-Jan. So we're talking kind of like 10 weeks. I've opened 3 new clinics, employed I don't know how many people, like just all this stuff. It was kind of crazy. Something that I was like, how did I actually do this while wearing all the hats? Because I'm currently wearing more hats than usual as well, and still getting one-on-one time, still having date nights with Pete every week, like all of those things. And I realized that it was my planning and my schedule that set me up because I have a really detailed schedule with white space in there, and I am semi-flexible with it. But I've kind of got my goal, all the tasks that are then linked to that goal, and I have them scheduled in my calendar week by week. And then so I just get dressed and go into work. I know when I'm starting. Everyone knows when I'm starting work. I know when I'm having lunch. I know, all those decisions are taken care of. And even what I'm going to do on that day is all kind of taken care of. So I can just go, right, where's that project? Right, go on to that project and kind of keep going on with it. And I think that is the only way that you can not procrastinate. Because you're
You
already
have
deciding
a
how you're
plan.
spending your time.
Yeah, you've got a plan. And so you've made the decision. I'm not going to procrastinate. I'm going to lock in time to actually make the decision to do what is going to help me move forward. That's really
Yeah.
good. And I then like that's I love how you mapped out that because that's like the journey of making a decision.
Mhm.
And that is the result of making a decision, which is what you're choosing to do, what you're saying no to, and how you're spending your time. So
Mm.
back up to the start though. Let's
Yeah.
talk about, okay, so if we're presented with a decision, everybody would do we want to talk about the small decisions or big decisions or just decisions in general?
I think you need to talk about your guiding light. So, what do you need to do before you can make decisions that you're going to be confident with? And if we go back to what we do with our advantage framework, is you look at those key questions. Why do we exist? What do we, those like, what are your, how do we behave? So, interestingly, and I was saying to you before we got on, I was struggling with the load that I've got at the moment. And so I went through my roles and goals and worked out how I need to feel safe in each of those roles and goals. And one of those was to go through that process with P and go, why does the team Dawson family exist? And outline why we exist. How do we behave? And so we kind of landed on our values and how we, how and why we want to raise our children. And, those really key parts of our guiding light. Because I think without that, how do you make any decisions?
So it has to be values based, values centered.
I think you've got to start there. I think it makes it a lot easier. Like you start with those really big picture things, and then you go, okay, what are some long-term things that we're trying to achieve? And then what do we need to do short term to get to the long term? And that's all decisions, right? And so
Mm,
then when you've got all that kind of mapped out, you get an opportunity, and you and I, have been through this before. You get someone call you and go, hey, I've got this, it's going to be really good, and da 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 da, and you're like, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing, but I've got all these other things on. I can't actually do anything. I don't want to. It's not actually aligned with my strategy and
mm,
my values. But I think, all decisions need to come back to whether it's aligned with you.
mm. That is how we should be making decisions. It sounds really simple, but I feel like so many people struggle with making decisions. And so I'm like, how can we make that even simpler? Because someone said to me the other day, I like it was just in a social conversation. They
Mm.
said to me, I had so Oh, this is what it was. They were visiting a new state. So they were visiting Queensland, up where you are. They were visiting Brisbane. And they were
Yeah.
saying, I hadn't really decided what I was going to do on the weekend. And then all of a sudden someone said to me, well, you can do this, you could do this, you could do this. Oh, what about this? And then he was saying like, then I had like 10 things to do and I just got like paralysis, overwhelmed paralysis because then there were so many
Mm.
options. So like it sounds simple to put it with your values, but how do you practically then like walk that out to move from, so if you've got your values, you're going, okay, well, for example, in that example, like I want to do something like, I want to
Yeah.
adventure. Your value might be adventure, experiencing new things. It might be getting yourself out of your comfort zone, health. So you've got your value there. How do you then like, well, what do you do practically when you've got, okay, these are so many options. How do I
Mm.
move through these options and think through these things?
Mm. So are we talking about big D or little D's? Like,
I
are we
don't
talking,
know.
yeah, because I mean, if you're talking about the weekend, I feel a bit like that too. I'm like, oh, it's the weekend. I
Mm,
want to rest. I want to sleep. I want to read a book. I want to do like, I'm like so torn between doing all these like downtime things and then like, oh, I want to go out and have drinks and cocktails with my friends and I want to get dressed up and I want to do all the yard work and I want to, all the things. So if it's something like that, I think again, it's about taking time and having some time and space and really kind of checking in with yourself. Because I feel like this when I go on holidays, like if I'm going to Noosa and I get like this when I do my planning retreat. And this last planning retreat, I specifically went to Perugian, which there's like nothing in Perugian, because I'm like, okay, I don't need to I don't have to figure out whether I want to go somewhere nice, like what restaurant to go to indulge. Like, do I go shopping and buy something? Do I go for the walk along the water? Like, I didn't have to decide anything, and it was raining, and so I just sat and just literally did nothing. But I think
So in
a
that instance,
really
you took away all your options.
and that's what
Mm.
Zuckerberg's doing with the
Mm.
clothes. So I think if you have got what's the paralysis thing? Analysis by
Yeah.
paralysis. If you have got if you are literally kind of procrastinating on everything or you feel like you can't move forward, I think you need to stop and you need to have some time and you actually need to check in with yourself to see how you're feeling. And even if it's going into the weekend or an RDO or a day, like Fridays is my day off, and
Mm.
well, kind of anyway, day off. But what, like, and I was getting a bit of that decision fatigue about what to do. I'm like, I'm going to play tennis. I'm going to go to sauna. I'm going to do this. And so then I mapped out again a schedule and I was like, okay, every second Friday, I have to have nothing in that day. But I do think, and it comes to, big decisions and little decisions. If you check in with yourself and just go, how much energy do I have right now? How am I actually feeling right now? And what is going to feel good in this moment to do?
Yeah. What you're saying is like the genius, because your discernment for your genius zone and
Yeah.
the way that you make decisions is through using intuition and
Ah,
instinct.
yeah.
So that's how you're making decisions. So just take it back. So we have talked about genius profiles and we've both done them. Lizzie is D for her genius for first. So that is discernment. And
Mhm.
so she's really good at discerning, but the genius of discernment is the natural gift of intuitively and instinctively evaluating ideas and situations. So that's what you're saying, right? You're like, take it back, check in with yourself, check in with your gut, your instinct, and how you're feeling, and then follow. Like that's how you would make your decisions, which explains
Yeah.
that's why that's your genius. Right? Like
Yeah.
you would naturally go to that. For me, my genius is invention galvanizing. So D, I think D is then my working competency. So they're not like my discernment is not as high as yours, not as strong as yours in terms of following a gut feeling.
Mm.
So for me, I always do listen to my gut feeling. And I think that's something I have learnt in business and being a mum, because a lot of doctors will dismiss you and be like, no, like the pediatricians will be like, no, your child's fine. And you're like, no, but I don't know how to articulate it, but I just in my gut know that there's something not right. Like, and most actually parents come into therapy with us and they say that, and they say, oh, I just
Mm,
had this feeling. So
mm,
I have learnt but then I guess if that does something that doesn't come naturally, you've got to learn to trust your gut and trust
mm.
your intuition, which I feel like I've had to learn that just over my career and my professional journey. But for me, if I have loads of options, what I would probably do is I would bring it back to like why, which is values. Like, why am I wanting to do all these things? So for me, it's like I want to run. I want to have quiet time. I want to then be there for the girls when they wake up, like say in the morning. And I want to also sleep. So it's going, how am I feeling? But why am I going to choose like what I'm going to do? Like what is the why behind each of these things? And then what I have learned is going, are all of these things urgent? No. So categorize them. I think because I'm
Yeah.
a little bit more like logical sometimes. So I would be like, okay, is there a way? This is probably me using my invention. I would then go, okay, if I want to do all of these, can I put them at different times in my schedule, or do I space it out over the week? So then I bring out my perspective a bit and I'll be like, okay, so instead of just thinking about this moment, I'll take it out to think about the day or to think about the week rather than thinking about one moment in time. And so then that can help sometimes then figure out and go, okay, so not everything here is urgent. And then sometimes then that takes away my options. So then I'll be like, okay, so I've got two options now. And that can help me then get clarity to then go, okay, because it's easier to choose between two things rather than like six or seven things. So that's probably what I would do. And then sometimes then I just you've just then got to be okay with the decision because of your why. So an example of exercise and sleep, I would then just be okay with getting up a little bit earlier, even though I want to do both things, because my why is to, be healthy and running and, increasing my fitness goals.
Yeah. I think what you're discussing there is like the key to procrastination. It's prioritizing. So you're
Yeah.
saying I want to do all these things, and I think it's a really powerful when you're feeling overwhelmed. And I've been doing this a lot recently. Like I'll write all the things down. And then to make myself feel better is I basically go, okay, and this is something I went through with my mentoring group the other week. They're like, write everything down and figure out what you can outsource. Like what is stuff that you don't actually have to do that you can outsource. So take that off your plate straight away. And then I always feel good of just putting it in so I use Asana, which is a task management system software, and I just put it into my calendar. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to deal with that on Thursday at 8 o'clock, or,
Mm,
and I kind of map out my week based on, when, like, I know when I'm at my sharpest. So I do all my writing in the morning and in the afternoon, and the middle of the day is for meetings where I'm connecting with people and I naturally get energized by that. So I think, yeah, what you're kind of explaining is that prioritization, which I think is really
mm,
good, because you actually need to prioritize when decisions need to be made. And you can actually then and this is what I do as well, and what I was talking about in terms of giving yourself time. So if someone's asking me for a decision, I'll be like, email that through. I'm going to sit on it and I'm going to look at this on Monday, when I know that you can actually think, because I actually go through in terms of energy management and go, when have I got the most energy, and when do I kind of, struggle? And 11 o'clock, I struggle.
mm,
So I know that I need to work solidly up to 11, and then I need to do tasks that energize me. So decisions, if they're hard for you, I think you need to pick a time in which you make those. So you can think logically and critically about them. So I really think that giving yourself time is really, really important.
And that can go both ways because if you're wanting to use your intuition, you actually do need time. If you feel time
Mhm.
pressured, it kind of stifles intuition because putting a time on it, putting a time on it makes it logical and left brain, but intuition is right brain. So it's like contrasting forces. However, though, that then can work in opposition if you like to procrastinate, because if you don't have a time frame on it, then you might just sit on it and sit on it and sit on it. So
You need a
I feel like
deadline.
that's an individual thing, whether you have a deadline for yourself or whether you don't,
Mm.
based on how you would naturally respond to decisions and what you would naturally gravitate to.
I feel like most people need a deadline. I think. I don't
Well,
know.
if you're
I give myself a
tenacity,
deadline.
yeah, if you're tenacity,
Mm.
if you're a high T, your like love is to get things over the line and to
That
push
is
things.
my frustration.
And yes, so that's why I'm like, no, because
Yeah.
Brie won't mind me sharing this, but I'm working with Brie at the moment because she's taken over managing director of Speak About, and she is a high T in her Genius Simone. And
Mm.
she loves making decisions and she loves pushing projects over the line and pushing things forward. Like
Mm.
she just loves it. So in that regard, I'm coaching her and saying you need to slow down and use intuition to make decisions because
Mm.
she just loves pushing them out. So she actually doesn't need a deadline on her because that's naturally what she gravitates to.
True.
And that's why you've said that because
Yeah.
your frustration is a T.
Yeah, and that's so interesting because I've got Georgia and Caitlin at KHP, which are both Tenacity, and Josh
Mm,
at Northside. I don't think Matt is. I think Matt is enablement. Maybe he's Tenacity as well. Anyway, the people I work closely with are T's, which is
mm,
great because I'm like, let's do this, and this is the way that we're going to do it. And then
yeah,
they go and do it and make sure it's done because then I
yeah,
move on to the next thing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it just with that time frame stuff, it depends on you. And
Mm.
I also think it depends on the situation as well. Like I will sit on something that is new or unknown for a lot longer than things that maybe I'm a little bit more familiar with. So,
Mm.
and it's also your impulsivity. Like I'm super impulsive. So I'll
Fine.
just be like, yep, 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 yep. And I hang on. Maybe I need to put a time frame on my thinking. So yeah,
Yeah.
it just depends on you. Um, I love what you said about the scheduling. I think you have really great accountability. So that is
Mm.
then the key as well is being accountable to yourself. Because even then, if you decide you put it in the schedule, you still don't have to do it. So it's having
Mm.
that accountability to be like, okay, I know I will put this in. I'm accountable to myself. I'll have that victory with myself. I don't need people praising me for following my schedule. But that is like a key, right? You have to be accountable to what you decided. And
Yeah,
don't
I think
procrastinate on that.
yeah, I think so. I think yeah, I feel like for me, I can be too accountable. So if I put it in there, I'm like, at all costs, this is happening. Which can be to my detriment, obviously, as well, which is why for me that stopping and checking in is really important. And a bit of flexibility, like going,
Mm,
okay, I've got this in my schedule. Do I need to really do it? Like, how important is it? And what's the outcome if I don't do it, versus if I do it? So
mm.
I think having that discernment is like, that's like another decision, right?
Mm. Well, in that, I like because what did you say just then? It was something like, what did you say? About the outcome of it,
Yeah.
the outcome, and they latched onto you. So, s- um, someone told
What's
us
the
this.
outcome if I do it versus if I don't do it?
Yeah. And so I think that's also a key part to decision making because when we had Evie, right? So this is a parenting example, but goes into decisions. When we had Evie, she's our first child, and you basically get reduced to a dummy. So you're second guessing every decision that you make, right? So, I remember coming home from hospital and going, oh my gosh, like, do I put the swaddle over the left shoulder or the right shoulder? Like, you're just second guessing like the smallest micro decisions.
Yeah, God, it's
And I was
hard.
like, do I put her on my right shoulder or my left shoulder to burp it, like just silly things that are totally laughable right now, right? But what's the best piece of advice I got was that you will not irreversibly damage your baby. And I remember
Yes.
I clung to that piece of advice because it made me go, all right, if I put her on my right shoulder, it's not going to damage her. If I put her on my left shoulder, it's not going to damage her. And honestly, that really helped me with both my newborn babies. And I think that principle of like irreversible versus reversible applies to decision making. So I love what you said with the outcome because that's what you're looking at. So if the outcome is totally reversible, then you might be more likely to make the decision quicker because then you can change it and pivot. However, if it's an irreversible decision, you're not going to make that quickly. And that's going to be really like thinking through and very accountable on that. And so looking at the outcome, I think is important. What would be an example of an irreversible decision in business or in our careers?
Um,
Would
oh,
it
I
be
don't know,
putting a lot
something
of
with,
money, a location maybe?
yeah, but that's kind of, you
That's
can
all reversible, isn't it?
reverse it. Yeah, you can go, okay, that's not working. I mean, I guess if you do something that compromises a relationship, that
Yes.
will be emotionally irreversible.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to people, you probably, and probably that's why some of those decisions are the most stressful and play on us so much. I know that stuff has a massive impact on me because I have people pleasing tendencies. And if I'm
Mm.
making a hard decision based on business evidence and numbers and what needs to happen, that can be really difficult. So I think emotional decisions, not that they're not reversible, but I guess need to be maybe handled with a bit more care because what you say is not reversible.
No, you can't take it back your words, right?
Yeah.
Um, but
So
then
that's again like why you need time.
Yeah, but then I'm thinking about it and I'm thinking if you're in business or if you're actually looking at your workload, a lot of the decisions are reversible. So
100%.
maybe we're overthinking and putting everything in an irreversible category and going, this is a really big deal. When you actually just put it in those terms, you go, hang on, I can reverse this, I can pivot. So all the decisions that we thought potentially were really important maybe aren't. And
Totally.
And then so then that totally just puts everything in
And it kind of takes the
perspective.
pressure off, doesn't it? I was having this reflection actually overnight because I kind of have been having a bit of anxiety about all the like change, and I, go into catastrophic thinking and all this stuff. Um, but if I look at the evidence of my history that I haven't gone bankrupt, I haven't lost my house, my kid's actually fine. I've had some bad health, like ultimately things okay. So I think sometimes we need to just put it into perspective, look at the evidence that we have that everything is okay and have a bit of faith that everything's going to be okay. And if you try something out and it doesn't work, you're actually going to be
Mm,
okay.
Because you've got, which is your values, because you've got your family
Yeah.
and you've got your health.
Yeah. So long
And
as your family and your health are okay, like
yeah,
at the end of the day, does anything else really, it doesn't really,
it's not it's not the end of the world.
yeah.
We're having
You,
our own opinion talking.
you don't, yeah, you don't have to we put so much weight on these things.
Mm. And I think that's where it's so helpful to get perspective. So, doing small things like on the weekend, we had 24 hours child-free time and we went for a hike in the Blue Mountains. And you just feel so small in nature just to get that perspective. And you're like, the world keeps going outside of
Mm.
your bubble. But it could also be a bigger perspective shift, like actually going, like when I went to Bali and getting down in the gutter in the street with people homeless and talking and doing that sort of thing. Like you've got two extremes there, but it's about perspective shifting activities.
Oh, 100%.
Mm. Um, even,
And you know
yeah.
what? That is like, I feel like when you're out of your comfort zone, like this is when you have the biggest epiphanies and realizations because it takes you to the depth of discomfort that forces you into some form of awakening. Like, and this is
Mm.
the beauty of being in that, like taking those risks, making the decision to take the risk.
Mm.
Because you have to go, well, if I lose everything, are we going to be okay? Like, and at the end of the day, if it comes down to it, if if it's aligned with your values and you have your people in your corner and you're healthy, it's when I think like what I've been reflecting on is like my mental health and my stress levels. And I'm like, why am I doing this again? Like, what is it? Why am I doing it? And then and actually was just writing this in my social media this morning because I went out with a group of girlfriends to lunch and one girl was resigning and she's like, oh, I'm just not enjoying it. I was like, oh, well, if you're not enjoying it, then you shouldn't do it. And I had spoken to the girls in the weeks leading up to this. And one of my friends was like, are you enjoying your work at the moment? And I was like,
Touche.
oh, and I'm like, no, I'm not. But the bigger picture, I know I'm on a journey to that. And
That's purpose.
yeah,
That's
like I'm
purpose. You
on
have a
purpose.
purpose
And
to go through the discomfort.
yeah, and I'm also aligned with values because like I said, I've still got my one-on-one time with my kids each week. I've still got family time. I've still got time with my husband. I'm still being healthy and exercising. I still have time on my own because they are my priorities.
Mm.
And that's why they're in my schedule before anything else. Because if I don't have those, I can't make the decisions. So I think it was a really interesting exercise, like just an interesting situation where my friend said that to me, and I said, you know what, doesn't matter how hard it is when I walk into one of my clinics, when I connect with my team, when I think about how far I've come and how many people we've helped, and when I connect with people like you and other allied health professionals, like it gives me butterflies, it makes me emotional. And there is just no way that I'll ever give up. It might look different. I might make different decisions. I might go, hey, I'm opening all these clinics. I don't want to do that. That's too much. Or, like, but I'm okay with that because it's a great, like, these are just small kind of steps in this whole journey and it's all aligned. So I think, um, yeah, I think if you're aligned to your if you can do it while maintaining your values and your priorities and it is in line with your bigger purpose, then I think you're in a much better place to make decisions that are going to fulfill you. And then you give yourself love and compassion and flexibility to change those. And that's okay, as long as you're
Mm.
healthy and you're with your people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even that is so perspective shifting.
Mm.
Um,
And sometimes it means you need to step out completely.
yeah.
And I think it's even more important. Like last week when I went to Perugian for 2 days, I did not have time to do that. Like I did not have time to do it. I had so much on my plate. And I'm like, you know what? This means I need to step away because I need to reset. I need to get clarity. And I've come back and and it's just like I've come back and all the things that I needed to fall into place have fallen into place because I've taken the action that I needed to take because I was clearer in my mind. I could make those decisions. I could move forward. I could figure out the little fiddly things and then it just kind of flows.
Mm, mm. You could work, yeah, you had time. You had space to look at pros, cons, emotions, that sort of thing. That's what you need, right? When you're making big decisions. So good. So good.
Daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly.
And that's why your planning is so important. This is what we're doing when we do our planning, whether it's like daily, weekly, monthly, like you said, quarterly, you're actually setting the tone and making decisions, which is kind of like batching your decisions, right? Batch your
Mm,
decisions. I think that's another thing as well, batching them.
yeah. Yeah. Batching's massive, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, I batch all my
mm,
decisions for the month. Yeah. Yep. So there you go. There's another tip. Batch your decisions.
and don't you like if someone asks you for a decision, and this is what I have fallen like it's been a trap for me in the past. Like if someone's asking and putting pressure on a decision, don't like you need to work off your own schedule and your own
Mm,
capacity to make that decision because you can be led to make the wrong decision to
mm,
keep someone happy.
mm.
And what happens then is you tend to overpromise before you've checked in with yourself, and you tend to prioritize other people over yourself because you're not checking in with yourself. You become resentful, you let that person down, and it just can be really destructive. So I think
Yeah.
if you can put some space in between those decisions, then you're in a much better place to really go through that process.
Absolutely. And that is so important if you're a business owner, a leader, or in management. You have to do that because there's so many decisions to be made, like we said at the start of the podcast. So there's a lot of food for thought in this podcast. It's something that is an intuitive process. And so, there's been a lot of intuition that we've talked about in this episode and a lot of, you know, backwards and forwards. And I don't really think there's a wrong or right way, right? It's just making sure that we feel equipped to make decisions in how best works for us. And then we are able then to achieve the results and the outcomes that we want from our values. Your values then deliver how you actually want your life to look like, your career, your family, all of that. So we want to encourage you today, if you feel like you're someone who sits on the fence and procrastinates, we hope that this has given you a little bit of insight into how you like different ways you can make decisions and some different tips, like setting a deadline for yourself or, batching decisions, like, some tips, some practical things that you can implement tomorrow. You can implement tomorrow. If you are someone that is good with making decisions, maybe it's just getting you to pause and reflect and go, okay, am I doing this the right way? Am I doing this well? Am I doing this values led? And it's always good to be learning, continuous development, continuous improvement, and just going, okay, am I doing this the way I want to be doing, making my decisions, and are the decisions serving what I need to be happening around me? So if you have any questions, as always, you can text us in. We do love hearing what you're loving about each episode and different breakthroughs that you've had or different learnings that you've had. We really love it, and it keeps inspiring us to keep giving you more episodes each week. If you've got questions, send us a message. And we really hope that this has helped you to become even more successful with your decision making, personally and professionally, to help your children, your clients, and also to help you have success in your personal life. So until next week, have a lovely week and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.